Welcome to today's edition of the Rush 24/7 podcast.
Everybody just calm down. Just calm down. All of this was predicted to you. Every bit of this was predicted to you. I mean, the media behavior. They're now asking to show you just how lame the media is and how little they've got. They're already asking, what did Trump know and when did he know it? And that's not the question. The question is, what did Barack Obama know and when did he know it and what has he engineered here? This all happened with Flynn back in December. Trump had not even been inaugurated yet. And it's still mysterious to me what really happened. Even if Flynn, as the incoming national security director, had called the Russian ambassador to talk about it, so what? That's not hard to imagine. That's not a big deal. It really isn't a big deal. Now, if he lied to Mike Pence and said, no, I didn't talk to the guy. I didn't talk to the guy about sanctions. I didn't talk about maybe lifting the sanctions. No, I didn't. And if he did do that, if he lied to Pence, then okay, there's a reason for Flynn to be in trouble and maybe to resign and get out of the way. But for the media to say, what did Trump know and when did he know it? Get a grip here, folks. I realize that a lot of people do not pay a whole lot of attention to this, and which is good. But for those of you who are, I can imagine the impact on you. And you're asking, well, when's it going to stop? I mean, how much more of this can anybody take? How much more of this kind of assault and attacking nature can any administration handle? And then the other question, how long are the Republicans in Congress going to handle it? You know, how long are they going to stay bucked up and stiff-spined about it? And time will tell on it. But I'm going to tell you, Trump's not stopping. There will be more ICE raids this afternoon to make people forget about this. The media is going to try as hard as they can not to let go of this. Because now they've got their scalp, they got blood in the water, they've got a scalp, and they think they can get another, and then another, and then another, until finally they get Trump. They have become the full-fledged resistance to Trump, and they have decided that that's going to be their modus operandi for the next 4 years. They're not going to do news. They have now mobilized and made it official. They're even talking about it, some of them are, on cable networks that, they disguise the words they use, but the impact is clear that they are going to do everything they can to get Trump out of Washington and out of the White House and out of office. So what we have here, we have a political assassination that's taken place here. A political assassination. Mike Flynn, who has been he worked for Obama 4 different times? You didn't know that? Let me find the details. In September 2011, Mike Flynn was promoted to lieutenant general assigned to the office of the Director of National Intelligence by Barack Obama. On April 17, 2012, President Barack Obama nominated Michael Flynn to be the 18th director of the Defense Intelligence Agency. The Defense Department has its own intel operation, and he ran it, as opposed to the Central Intelligence Agency. It's called the DIA, and it's big, and it's relevant, and it's important, and it does great work, and Flynn ran it after having been promoted to lead it by Obama in 2012. He took command of the DIA in July of 2012. He is a member of the Democrat Party. According to Wikipedia, Michael Flynn is a member of the Democrat Party. Aside from all of this, he has a reputation as a great man. He's also a hawk. And that is something the left just can't abide. Hawks like Michael Flynn, they may as well be Dr. Strangelove. They want to run around, they want to start nuclear war, they want to destroy the planet, they're deranged, they're unhinged. They love blood and guts, and they love the sound of gunfire and napalm in the morning, and they just love it, and this is totally unacceptable. So we have a resignation over a phone call. A freaking phone call. The Democrats don't resign when they're caught red-handed with their hand in the till or in bed with an intern or whatever else transgression the Democrats engage in. There are no resignations and there are no demands for resignations. And if you want to compare the Trump administration to the Obama administration, you just need to ask yourself one question. Why did you vote for Trump? 8 years of the Obama administration, it may not have appeared to be chaotic, and it may not have appeared to be amateur hour, and it may not have appeared to be out of control, but it was in terms of its agenda. The Obama administration was trying to dismantle the United States of America. That's why everybody voted for Trump. And the people that supported Obama and were trying to dismantle the United States of America are still out trying to do it. And now doing so via taking aim at Trump and his administration. Flynn, I guess, didn't want to be a distraction, especially given how worked up the drive-bys are. Because the drive-bys are seeing a Russian under every bed. The drive-bys are seeing a Russian at every computer keyboard. You know, they walk in their own offices and see a keyboard, they see a computer, and they think the Russians are there. Now, the media is saying that Flynn's conversation with the Russian ambassador back in December could have left him open to blackmail. Are we serious about this? Flynn was open to blackmail? Who was it that the drive-bys wanted to see as president? That would be Hillary Rodham Clinton, who could have been blackmailed 6 ways from Sunday by the Russians and who the heck else we know. We don't know who has those 34,000 emails that she deleted. We don't know who has Tom Brady's jersey. We're trying to find both. We don't know what top national security secrets were revealed in those 34,000. This is a woman whose homebrew server was hacked by world powers, the Chi-Coms, the Russians. This is a woman who, with her famous Russian reset, embarrassed the United States of America. Blackmail? Here's Hillary Clinton, who had collected campaign contributions supposed in advance that were nothing more than advance payments for policy consideration. She was selling access to the Oval Office via the Clinton administration. You want to talk about blackmail? You worried about blackmail and Michael Flynn and Donald Trump when you were going to have Hillary Clinton in the White House if you had your way? But if you watched yesterday's press conference, if you read about the fallout from it this morning, the drive-bys now smell blood and they're pig-biting mad. They weren't able to ask Trump the Flynn question just because Trump is calling on conservative media now in these press conferences, and it's really ripping the drive-bys a new one. They just can't abide it. But, folks, I don't want to sound like I'm delivering admonitions or warnings, just a reassuring sense here that all of this was predicted. It was going to happen, just like the protests that magically and immediately sprang up after Trump announced his executive order. This is who the left is. This is what you voted against. This is what you wanted no more of. This behavior, not by Trump, not by Flynn. What you voted against, the reason you voted for Trump is exactly what you're seeing day to day now from the left and from the Democrat Party and from the media. Now, I've had this story laying about. I've addressed this story once, and I've kept it laying around. There have been little additions to this story. There's a Paul Sperry piece from the New York Post back on late Saturday night, Sunday, how Obama is scheming to sabotage Trump's presidency. Now, this also should not be news. 2 years before Obama's term of office ended, I made repeated predictions that Obama would set a presidential precedent. that he would be the first president to not go away after he leaves office. And I figured this out when I first heard that Obama was going to stay in Washington. And I predicted, correctly so, that Obama was going to do whatever necessary to make sure that any unraveling of his agenda by Trump would be stopped, that an effort would be made to stop it. Now, one thing I predicted that hasn't come true, I predicted that Obama would call a network friends of his and go on TV and rip Trump. That has yet to happen. It's more clandestine than that. There is actually a behind-the-scenes effort to sabotage Trump's administration, and I can give you a name, one person who's actively engaged in it twice now, Sally Quinn. She was the acting attorney general because the Democrats in the Senate delayed confirmation of Trump's cabinet appointees, including Jeff Sessions, to be the attorney general. And it turns out, Sally Quinn was the one who refused to defend Trump's executive order banning travel from those 7 countries and Syria. She also, it turns out, supposedly advised the Trump administration that Flynn was talking to the Russians on a phone call back in December. Now, the question arises, how did anybody know? There is a huge problem. You want to be concerned about a problem, I'll give you a problem to be concerned about, and that's the leaks that are coming from the Trump administration. Except I don't think they're coming from the Trump administration. I think it's part of Obama scheming to sabotage Trump's presidency. Because we've discussed this. The bureaucracy is filled with embedded leftists who have not been elected. They've been appointed. Some of them are in there for their lifetimes. They're in there as career appointees, not political appointees, which mean they stay no matter who the president is. The left has been stocking, so to speak, the bureaucracy with its own people, just like they've been stocking the judiciary with their own judges. And there's all kinds of leaking going on. And even the details of this phone call between Flynn and the Russian ambassador, somebody knows about it and somebody leaked it. And Sally Quinn's out there. I tried to warn the Trump people. But the Trump people weren't listening. I don't know what the Trump people, but they weren't listening. But she's trying to say that she tried to save them. There really isn't any precedent for this. No president has ever formed a shadow government to sabotage the next president. Yet that is what Paul Sperry alleges in his piece in the New York Post over the weekend. Obama, according to this piece, has organized 32,000 well-trained agitators, i.e. community organizers. And these are the people who were going into Republican town halls, into Republican districts, and overwhelming the meetings. Jason Chaffetz finally called it out the other day. Somebody was asking him, so, Congressman, what about your town halls? It looks like your constituents are just so opposed to what you're doing. And he shot back, these are not my constituents. These are bought and paid for leftist protesters, and they're being paid to be here. And he's exactly right. That's exactly who they are. And they are being paid by Democrat donors. At the top of that list is George Soros. Some of the people that donated to Hillary Clinton's campaign, some of the people that donated to Barack Obama's campaigns are all paying for this. The media is not impartial. The media is not sitting back, biding its time, twiddling its thumbs, and then seeing what's happening here and reporting the outrage. The media is creating the outrage. The media is the blood in the water. The media is the assassination squad. The media is the Democrat Party. The media is the resistance. And you have to openly admit this and be aware of it if you're going to partake of what the drive-by media broadcasts, prints, and reports each and every day. A pull quote from the Paul Sperry piece. Obama's doing it through a network of leftist nonprofits led by Organizing for Action. That is a new subdivision of Obama's protest group, if you will, that he formed after he was inaugurated, called Organize for America. It was Organizing for America that I think gave birth to Occupy Wall Street, sort of a subhead. Now it's called Organize for Action. Sperry writes that normally you would expect an organization set up to support a politician and his agenda to close up shop after the candidate leaves office, but not Obama's Organizing for Action. They're just now gearing up for battle with a growing war chest and more than 250 offices around the country. Sally Yates. What did I say? Sally Gates? Sally Quinn. Well, could have been Sally Quinn. You know, she's a drive-by journalist out of Sally Quinn. A Sally is a Sally. Bring Sally up, bring Sally down. Moby. Album B-side. Bring Sally up, bring Sally down. Anyway, 250 Organizing for America offices under the auspices of Barack Hussein have opened around the country since Obama has left office. And they are gearing up for battle. They have a growing war chest and more than, as I say, 250 offices around the country. Now, I don't want to get bogged down. What usually happens here is the left goes out on the attack. They've claimed a scalp here. And in the past, I have seen it as my duty to spend some time defending against the assault that has taken place. And at times it's been necessary. But I'm not going to take the bait, folks. I'm just not going to accept the premise and defend things on the basis that they're right and that Trump's wrong and that Trump's bad and that Trump's incompetent. His administration shouldn't be. I'm not even going to go there. It's a waste of time, and it pushes forward a premise of theirs that I do not want to credit or acknowledge or give any credence to. There are other things, related, unrelated, that I want to spend time with. There is a very fascinating piece related to this in a distant way. You ever heard of Foreign Policy magazine? Not Foreign Affairs. Foreign Affairs is a publication of the Council on Foreign Relations, a brother and sister organization to the Trilateral Commission. Foreign Policy is an independent organization and publication that's its ideology, like anything else that's printed these days, would lean a little bit left. And they have a fascinating piece that I read and marked up for today's program last night, basically on how all of a sudden the Russians and Putin are afraid of Trump, that he's a different ball of wax than what they thought they were getting. We'll get to that in a moment. Okay, look, if I've heard from one person, I must have had emails from 25 people. It's Sally Gates, not Sally Quinn. I heard from Cal Thomas. I heard from Andy McCarthy. I heard from administration people. Let me ask you, does anybody really think I meant Sally Quinn, or was I just so eager to get to the nub of it that I just said the first name that came to my mind? I mean, I obviously knew it was Sally Gates. Call it verbal dyslexia or what have you. See, that's my point. I knew it was... Just having fun here. I want to thank all my helpers for making sure that I got this corrected and got this right, because I was really off the rails there accusing Sally Quinn of this when it's actually Sally Gates. Anyway, hang on, folks. We're coming right back. Grab me soundbite 21. We just got this. Marie Harf is guesting on a Fox program right now. It's the Old Babe show with one guy in the middle. And it's called One Lucky Guy. Well, no, the show is called Outnumbered. They got one guy in there against four women, and he's got to act PC. Anyway, they put her in there. She's from the Obama State Department. And what? Yes, I know. Sally Gates. Yes. Yes. I just needed a couple of minutes in the last segment, which is the only reason I spent it here. We didn't have enough time to get anything substantively. No. Okay, here's what I think. I don't think Flynn resigned. I think he was cut loose. He probably had no problem going because he doesn't want to be a distraction. But the guy has a distinguished record. He's a hawk. The Democrats hate people like this. But I don't think Trump should have caved if that's what happened. If Trump asked for his resignation, because I think that's what happened here. I mean, I know they're gonna portray it as Flynn resigned. This is the way these things are done. But I think this is a tactical mistake, folks. Giving them a scalp like this is only going to intensify this. Once you let the media and the Democrats know that they can force you to get rid of people you've put in your administration, they're not going to stop. Who the media going to want next? I'll give you Kellyanne Conway. They're not going to stop until they get rid of Kellyanne Conway. And next it's going to be Spicer. And when did Saturday Night Live become news, by the way? Saturday Night Live, a failing comedy show before Trump came along, does their skits on Saturday night, and it's the lead news item the next day on Sunday and into Monday, just like it was when, what's-her-name, Tina Fey was impersonating Sarah Palin. I remember one year when Barbara Walters was still working at ABC News. It was the last, I've made this list 2 or 3 times, top 10 most, not famous, top most fascinating people of the year. And I was on that list 3 times. And the last time I was on that list, you know who else was? Tina Fey. For her impersonation of Sarah Palin. Well, if you're going to have somebody impersonating Palin as one of the most fascinating people of the year, why not just go for the real thing and put Palin on the list? But everybody's running around saying, Melissa McCarthy, oh my God, this is the greatest ever. You see the way she makes fun of Sean Spicer? And then Alec Baldwin and the Trumps. And when did what happens on Saturday Night become news? They report this as hard news. Saturday Night Live once again skewered the Trump administration. What are you people in the drive-bys unable to do it well enough? So now you've got to credit a comedy show late night on Saturday for this? So Kellyanne Conway, that's who they're going to go for next. Anybody disagree with me on this? And then they're going to go for Spicer. And who knows where they're going to stop. But they're not going to stop. That's the point. I would have just smiled and kept going. Flynn, it's not even clear. It's not even clear because we're dealing with leaks here. And Flynn has said that he's not certain. He told Pence that he didn't speak about sanctions to the Russians and then thought that he might have and so forth. It's not even clear that he lied, but I don't want to split hairs on that. That's getting too much in the weeds. This is right out in front of us. And if there's obviously somebody or numerous people in the Trump administration who thought they could end this by giving the drive-bys Flynn. But it's not going to end anything. It never does. It's just going to intensify. And that once they've secured a scalp, they're going to keep going for more. And you're either going to keep giving them scalps or you're going to put your foot down and move on and tell them to go pound sand. I mean, this man had worked at the Defense Intelligence Agency. He was a patriot. He'd worked for both administrations, a pro-life Democrat. His only sin was that he was in the Trump administration. And I'll tell you what this is. You know what this is really all about? I'll tell you what this is. This is what the Democrats are so irritated. And this is why I know that Obama's post-presidential sabotage program's involved here. What is this really all about? This is about Flynn, the incoming national security advisor, calling the Russians to talk about sanctions. Well, what sanctions? Well, it just so happens to be these are the sanctions that Obama slapped on the Russians for their supposed hacking of our election. Well, I'm sorry, folks, but that's a bogus premise to begin with. The Russians had nothing to do with whoever won our election. That they could not have done. Did they try? Who knows? Do they always try? Probably. Are they alone in trying to screw up the way things work in this country? No. Was it the first time the Russians had tried to hack a party server or network? No. They just happened to succeed this time. And all of the data that they released through WikiLeaks happened to be very damning to John Podesta and the Democrats. And so Obama puts sanctions on Russia. And I'll tell you, I think about this. I think Obama knew this is all just for show. He knew this was all bogus. He had to do it. He's got this rabid base out there that has to be fed its diet of hate every day and every week. Obama's leaving office and the reason the Democrats can never lose an election because of their ideas. Whenever the Democrats lose an election, it's either voter fraud, which of course does not exist when Republicans allege it. They either lose because of voter fraud, or somebody cheated, or somebody lied, or something else went wrong. Their messaging was bad. It's never their ideas. Never. Including in this one. So this one, the lame excuse for why Hillary lost, even though she has a record of losing elections like this, the Russians. And it goes further. Not just that the Russians sabotage the Democrats. The Russians love Trump. The Russians are in bed with Trump, and we are supposed to hate the Russians. Well, the Democrats used to be in bed with the Soviet Union. The Democrats loved Soviet leaders. They loved Mikhail Gorbachev. They loved Brezhnev. They loved Yuri Andropov. They loved them all. They hated Ronald Reagan. They counseled the Soviet Union how to get along and get by with Reagan until they, the Democrats, could get back in power. That was our old buddy Ted Kennedy that did that. So now here come the Democrats all of a sudden outraged that there might be a relationship between Trump and Russia when the Democrats have lived off of a practical love affair with the Soviet Union for all those years. The hypocrisy here, the stench is so bad I can barely inhale. So they have to come up with a trumped-up excuse of why they lost. It can't have anything to do with their ideas. So it's the Russians. The Russians tampered. The Russians hacked the election. The Russians interfered. And they keep browbeating because Obama had said in months prior to the election, Obama official statements from the government, the Russians hacking had nothing to do. Obama claimed it wasn't successful. Obama went out numerous times and claimed that the Russians' attempts to hack Hillary's server and all this had never worked because it was in Obama's best interests to portray a picture where the Russians were incompetent, where they were not invasive, where they didn't succeed. And he went out and made this point 2 or 3 times, despite the fact that their president, Barack Obama himself, was telling everybody the Russian hack didn't happen. And this is months before the election. And then he did it again when they demanded that he say something about it. He made it clear. But then after the election, Trump wins, and they have just discombobulated, can't figure it out. They went back to it. The Russians are to blame. The Russians did it, and then Trump's in bed with them. All because Trump wouldn't criticize Putin. All because Trump seemed to be flattered when Putin complimented him. Russians getting scared to death. Trump getting the Democrats to get scared to death. Democrats, oh my God, this guy's in bed with the Russians, and the Russians killed us. The Russians destroyed our chance at the election. So they got Russia on their mind. Next thing that happened, Flynn, the incoming national security director, is talking to the Russian ambassador, and it is supposedly private phone conversation. We don't know how it leaked, probably from Sally Quinn. I know. Sally Yates, I know, you said it on purpose. Sally Yates somehow got access to the details of the phone call, leaks it out. Now we know Flynn's talking to the Russians. Now, what does this all add up to? I will tell you, the Democrats and their allies are convinced that Flynn was assuring the Russians that Obama's little sanctions were going to be yanked away as soon as Trump got into it. That's what they think was going on. That is the elephant in the room. Nobody wants to speculate on the details of the conversation. Flynn can't assure anybody he had the conversation, but I'll tell you, you put a Democrat on TV and I'll tell you what's in their mind. They are offended. They are outraged because they have got themselves believing that Flynn was telling the Russian ambassador in advance, don't worry about Obama's sanctions, Obama's history, he's gone. Our boy Trump is going to pull him out. He's going to yank him. He's going to remove the sanctions not long after he's inaugurated. That's what they think went on. Do you doubt me, Mr. Snerdley? That is what they think went on. And they think that would be outrageous because Obama was a legitimate president when he slapped those sanctions on. And those sanctions should stay on Russia because Russia stole the election from Hillary. And they think Flynn was assuring, this hasn't Maybe others have speculated this. I haven't heard, but I know this is what everybody's underwear's in a wad over when they think about Flynn talking to the Russian ambassador. Let's not forget that it was Obama, a month before the 2012 elections, who told Dmitry Medvedev, this little short guy, he's about 5'4", he's one of Putin's number one aides. Well, there's a hot mic. Obama didn't know the mic was still on, and Obama's telling Medvedev to tell Vlad to relax, that I'll have a lot more flexibility after I win the election. He was talking about getting rid of American nuclear weapons. Putin wasn't satisfied with the speed with which Obama was de-nuking us, and he wanted Medvedev to tell Putin, don't sweat it, I got it handled. I have much more flexibility because nobody can do anything to me then. After I win re-election, can't run again, they can't do anything to me. So here come the Democrats, and here's Obama. Actually, we have evidence of him colluding with Putin. And now these guys are all upset because they are convinced that Flynn was telling the Russians, don't sweat it, we're going to yank Obama's sanctions off, and it's going to be fine and dandy once Trump gets into office. That's what they're desperately trying to find. That's what they want to know. $1 to a donut. I'm just giving you my wild guess assessment here. But I don't think this is not going to end well if this keeps up. If these kinds of Democrats demand Flynn go, people demand Flynn go, and this is hardly a fireable or resignable offense unless the lie to Pence was just provable and blatant. But that's you think the Democrats are concerned that Flynn lied to Pence, and for that reason Flynn has to go? It has nothing to do with it as far as the Democrats are. They couldn't care less about that. Now, I got the Harf soundbite here. I'll play that when we get back. Don't go away here. So the Democrats have their press conference going, and what did President Trump know and when? And they're all saying it doesn't end with this affair, doesn't. What affair? What really happened here? You want a little history about the Democrats and Flynn? I'll tell you, this phone call leak, Flynn and his conversation with the Russian ambassador in December, it's just the latest excuse for the media to go after Flynn. Before they heard about that phone call, the drive-bys were demanding that Flynn resign because once upon a time, he participated in a forum that was sponsored by Russia Today. Russia Today had a forum. He shows up. They wanted him to resign over that. Back in February of 2017, February 1st, it's a couple weeks ago, 6 House Democrats sent a letter to the Secretary of Defense, James Mad Dog Mattis, requesting an investigation into Flynn's connection to Russia Today, which happened back in 2015. The Democrats claim that Flynn violated the anti-bribery foreign emoluments clause by accepting money from Russia Today to appear in their forum. Now, are you kidding me? All these same people who had no problem with Bill and Hillary's paid speeches from whoever, from Chi-Com leaders, Chi-Com business leaders, anybody around the world, were paying the Clintons $350,000, $275,000 to come make speeches, and she's running for president. And they not once expressed any concern whatsoever about bribery, blackmail, or any of the other things that they're now alleging that Flynn was guilty of because of one-time appearance at something called Russia Today back in 2015. That is it. Flynn was a patriot, is a patriot. He had Trump's back. He loved Donald Trump. He was one of the early possibilities for Secretary of Defense. I remember him at Trump rallies. I mean, he even appeared in a debate-like thing. He didn't do well in this debate, but there was no question he was totally behind Trump because He really believes this country is a great nation at risk in a dangerous world and that our threats are both external and internal. And he wanted to root him out. The Democrats know all this. So now they want to portray this guy as some insane general who wants to start wars, that's taking money from Russia and is in violation of all kinds of constitutions. And he's out there with that phone call to Russian ambassador. I guarantee you that they think that Flynn was promising the Russians to lift Obama's sanctions, which would be like canceling the Ten Commandments as far as they're concerned. Here's Marie Harf. She was the State Department spokesman for a time during the Obama administration, talking about all this on Fox moments ago.
Look, Flynn had to go. But broader than that, I think, is the question of this administration's relationship with Russia.
See?
The content of that call does matter, I think. Either Flynn made this call going rogue or as part of a strategy that the incoming administration had to be closer with Russia. I think that's concerning. I think that matters. And so going forward, Flynn is out. That was right. But I do think we need to take a hard look at where this administration is going with Russia. Just look at the news today about the ship off the coast of Delaware.
Yeah,
this is serious stuff.
Yeah, there's a ship. There's a Russian trawler off the coast of Delaware. Do you know why? So that Flynn could have a secret network to speak with the Russian ambassador, even though he has resigned. What do they think is the Russian? What is it? The Russians are allies of these people are the ones that are insane. Marie Harf has just demonstrated that she is irrational and her feet are not on the ground about any of this. These are the dangerous people when it comes to protecting this country. And we will be back. Susan Rice lies 5 times, 5 different Sunday morning TV shows on what happened in Benghazi and a video being behind. Marie Harf, no care, no problem. This way out of proportion here, folks. Way gone. Be back after this. Greetings, my friends. Welcome back. You are tuned to the most listened to radio talk show in America, hosted by me, Rush Limbaugh, meeting and exceeding all audience expectations every day. 800-282-2882 if you want to be on the program. We're awaiting the White House lynching, which is soon to become a Sean Spicer, will be drawn and quartered by the drive-by media as he seeks to explain why Trump has not yet resigned the presidency. And the media will be demanding when they can expect that to happen. Are you ready for this? Now, it's CNN, so consider that. Headline, Republican senators call for Russia investigation, Flynn testimony. Are you ready for the lead? The Senate's second-ranking Republican and other Republican senators are calling for an investigation into connections between President Donald Trump and Russia. And they want former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn to testify. Senator John Cornyn, who has called for an investigation into Trump's tie to Russia before Flynn resigned, told reporters today that the Senate Standing Committee with oversight, the committees with oversight of intelligence, need to investigate Flynn. Senator Roy Blunt, a member of the Senate Intelligence Committee, also told KTRS Radio that he wanted to speak with Flynn. Blunt told the radio that an investigation needs to happen. I think everybody needs that investigation to happen, and the Senate Intelligence Committee, again, that I serve on, has been given the principal responsibility to look into this. And I think that we should look into it exhaustively so that at the end of this process, nobody wonders whether there was a stone left unturned, and shouldn't reach conclusions before you have the information you need to make those conclusions. Senator Lindsey Graham also said he wants an investigation into Flynn's conversations with a Russian ambassador about sanctions. Senator Graham said, I think Congress needs to be informed of what actually General Flynn said to the ambassador about lifting sanctions. And I want to know, Said Senator Graham, did General Flynn do this by himself, or was he directed by somebody to do it? So it turns out that I was right about all of this, except for one thing. It's the Republicans now that are demanding this. Senator Graham thinks that Flynn was discussing the lifting of sanctions with the Russian ambassador, Obama sanctions on Russia for hacking the election. So I guess the Republicans are content with that premise to survive, that the Russians hacked the election, and that maybe is why the Democrats lost. And then Flynn went and made a call to the Russian ambassador in December. And now Senator Lindsey Graham wants to know if Flynn made that call on his own, or if he was directed to make that call by somebody, and if so, who, and did they talk about the lifting of sanctions that Obama had slapped on the Russians. So it is clear now that the Republicans think that they can nail Trump too. And they have, according to CNN, they are out front demanding an investigation into Trump and Russia, with Flynn the bit player. Flynn's just a guy that made a phone call. And the Republicans in the Senate don't think Flynn did that on his own. Somebody had to give him orders to do it. And if so, who? Well, let's go through it. Was it Kellyanne? Was it Spicer? Was it Bannon? Was it Stephen Miller? I mean, take your pick of whoever they want to get rid of. Was it Sally Yates? Was it Sally Yates? Did Sally Yates tell Flynn, you ought to call the Russians and discuss this sanction stuff with them? The Obama administration holdover. Well, there you have it. I mean, the Republican-led Senate is taking the lead on getting to the bottom of Trump's relationship with Russia. Here is Elijah Cummings, a member of the Congressional Black Caucasians. He was participating in a House Democrat press conference to talk about the resignation of Flynn. This was just before the top of the hour. Here is what Congressman Cummings, who's in the Baltimore area, had to say.
Flynn was secretly communicating with Russian officials at the same time that Russia was attacking our democracy.
You see?
Flynn may have violated the Logan Act by discussing the sanctions imposed by the United States in response to Russia's attacks. We have no idea why Flynn was doing all of this and why he was trying desperately to help Russia. And I know he's now resigned, but he's not going to get off that easy. We need some answers to a whole lot of questions. But the obvious questions are, what did the president know?
Right.
And when did he know it?
What did the president know, and that's the obvious question here. Why was Flynn trying to help the Russians? Notice his opening line. Flynn was secretly communicating with Russian officials at the same time that Russia was attacking our democracy. See, the Democrats, they just cannot have lost that election because of their ideas. They cannot have lost that election because Obama was wrecking the economy, destroying health care. No, nothing to do with that. They lost because the Russians wanted Trump to win. Look, we're going to gyp this thing when it starts. It's anybody's guess. Let me start on the phones here so I can get some people who have been holding for a while in on this. I do have this piece from Foreign and Policy magazine I want to share. It's owned by Washington Post, to give you a heads up, but it's alternately funny and fascinating. We'll get to that, all of that in due course. We're going to start with Sean in Philadelphia. Hey, Sean, I'm glad you called. Great to have you on the program.
Hey, Rush, big fan. I've been listening to you since '89. I just wanted to call. This Flynn thing is making me sick to my stomach. And it's not just because the Democrats are swarming around. They taste blood. They just want to drag this out and bring down Trump. What really angers me is that the Republicans are silent. I mean, just imagine if the shoe was on the other foot, this was a Democrat president, and the Democrats had control of both the House and the Senate, and if this happened to their NSA advisor, do you think they'd be silent? No, they'd be counterattacking on the phone. They'd be trashing people. Where are our people backing up this president?
Wait a minute. You think the Republicans would be attacking Obama if this were reversed?
No, I think the Democrats. I'm saying the Democrats would protect their own. The Democrats would protect their own president if the shoe was on the other foot. The Republicans are silent when it comes to.
No, they're not.
It's almost like they want to see him fail. They want him to go down. And these Republicans, they do not have a pulse on what we feel out here because, we're still angry at them.
Sean.
The reason we elected him is because of the Republicans' failure. They take over the House. They say they're going to repeal Obamacare. Then they don't do it. We give them the Senate. Then they don't do it. They're saying, oh, well, we don't have a president. We give them a president. Where's the repeal of Obamacare? What's going on? And then these guys are swarming they're trying to bring down Trump with the Democrats.
Every time I take a breath to speak here, it keeps going.
They want hearings? I mean, this is unbelievable.
Well, the Russians are, the Republicans are not being silent. Sean, you may not have been listening to the program while you were on hold, but I'm almost afraid to tell you this. If you did you hear what I said about the Republicans say just in the last 5 minutes?
I think I heard something about that they call for hearings, and I hope that was a mistake. I hope I didn't hear that.
Well, here you go. The Senate's second-ranking Republican. These are the guys you think are being quiet and that they ought to pipe up and start defending the president. Ready? Senate's second-ranking Republican and other Republican senators are calling for an investigation into Donald Trump and his connections with Russia. And they want Flynn to show up and testify. Senator Lindsey Graham, hang on. Senator Lindsey Graham said he wants an investigation into Flynn's conversations with a Russian ambassador about sanctions, and he wants to know, quote, did Flynn do this by himself or was he directed by somebody to do it? Then there's Richard Burr, North Carolina chairman, Senate Select Committee on Intel, told reporters he hadn't made up his mind yet on whether Flynn should testify, but others think that there needs to be an investigation into Trump and Russia. This
is sickening.
This
is absolutely sickening.
You think that they would be coming to Trump's defense and badgering the Democrats, and they've joined the Democrats and wanting to get to the bottom of this. This is according to CNN, so I take this under advisement. Could be fake news, but they've got a lot of this stuff in quotes from these Republicans. No, McCain hadn't said anything, but he may as well have. If Lindsey Graham speaks, it's 6 of one, half dozen, or the other. The press briefings underway. Looks like they got Mnuchin up there speaking, Treasury Secretary. So it's going to be a while before the sharks get out of the cage and start taking their chunk bites out of Spicer. Anyway, I'm really sorry, Sean, to have to impart that information to you when you're so, because you're right. I guarantee you that you had people standing up and cheering when you were expressing your desires of the Republicans and why you voted for Trump. Does any of this, let me just say, are you still there, by the way?
I am.
Let me just ask, is any of this Flynn stuff, any of this assault on Trump by the media, is any of it starting to make you question Trump?
No. Trump is doing exactly what Trump said he would do. And if there's a couple missteps, administratively, well, the guy's not a politician. I'm not worried about it. Flynn didn't do anything wrong. I mean, unless he wasn't accurate with the vice president. But other than that, these guys are making it seem like he did something as bad as Susan Rice or Hillary Clinton. But of course, no, our people don't attack them. We just attack our own. This is disgusting.
Well, this is all premised, I'm telling you, from the Democrat standpoint and the media, this is all premised on the fact that they should not have lost this election, that everybody knows Trump should have lost with only 20% of the vote. Everybody knows Hillary should have won in a landslide. The polling showed that. Common sense said that. Hillary should have won. She should be president. And the only thing explains this is Russia. Russia and Putin. And obviously there's a love affair they have with Trump. And Flynn proves it. Because he was on the phone with a Russian ambassador, and they think he was telling a Russian ambassador, be cool, we'll lift the sanctions once we get rid of Obama, get Trump in there. They don't have any idea that happened. I'm sure that's what they think happened. And so now the Republicans obviously think the way they think. They think the American people are buying hook, line, and sinker what the media is saying. And even if they don't think that, folks, look, there's no mystery here. This is the establishment versus the outsiders still. And it was always going to be. Let me take a break, and we'll judge when to jip the White House press briefing according to what happens there. Let's get a break out of the way. We'll come back here in just a second. Okay, here we go. Spicer talking about Flynn, the press briefing. We jip it now.
The situation in eastern Ukraine is one that demands clear and strong condemnation of Russian actions. President Trump has made it very clear that he expects the Russian government to de-escalate violence in the Ukraine and return Crimea. At the same time, he fully expects to and wants to be able to get along with Russia, unlike previous administrations, so that we can solve many problems together facing the world, such as the threat of ISIS and terrorism. The president is currently evaluating a group of very strong candidates that will be considered to fill the National Security Advisor position permanently, and is confident in the ability of General Kellogg, a decorated and distinguished veteran of the United States Army, until that person is ultimately chosen. Before I get into the president's schedule for today, a quick recap of the president's activity over the last few days, since we haven't had the honor of sharing so much time together. The president's been keeping a close eye on the Orville Dam situation in California. We've worked closely with Doug LaMalfa, who represents California's 1st District, where the dam's located, and other state officials to help people who have been impacted. The situation is a textbook example of why we
fade that down. Let me tell you a little bit what Spicer said before our break ended. He basically said that the president has been incredibly tough on Russia, is going to continue to be tough on Russia, that they're not going to cut Russia any slack whatsoever. Clearly, this was intended to rebut the premise out there that Trump is in bed with the Russians and that Flynn was running some advance work for Trump to remove sanctions that the exalted Obama slapped on the Russians for stealing the election from Hillary. Now, that seems to be the premise. So now Spicer's recounting some of the things Trump has been doing. He's going to get into Trump's schedule for the rest of the day, and then they'll go to the sharks and their bites, which will be the questions for Spicer. Let me grab another phone call. Till that begins, John in Raleigh, North Carolina. Hey, John, great to have you on the program. How you doing?
Doing well. This is probably the best birthday present I could ever ask for, to get to speak to you, because I'm a lifelong fan.
Well, happy birthday, my man. How are you?
Good, good. So I have two questions. One, what advice would you give the Trump administration on how to deal with Obama's shadow government? And two, is this the big gift for the Republicans to finally do away with Trump and his administration?
Yeah, that last question is loaded, and we'll have to see. Again, I want to preface that this is a CNN story. CNN would love nothing more than to report that the Republicans see this as an opportunity to finally discredit Trump and get rid of him. And that's exactly what this story looks like. I mean, this story looks exactly like it's not the Democrats, folks. It's the Republicans that want to investigate Trump.
Absolutely.
It's the Republicans that want to investigate Trump and Russia. And if that's true, then I think the answer to it, it's establishment versus outsider. It's not Republicans versus Trump. It's because the Democrats are going to say the same thing. If this is true, it means the Republicans and Democrats are on the same page where all this is concerned. And it's an exaggerated story with a bloated premise. And if they see this as an opportunity to get rid of Trump somehow, somewhere, to start that process, God bless us. As to the first question that you had, I've not worked in government, so all I can do is answer as a civilian would, without the necessary knowledge and understanding. First thing I would do, so you've got a story alleging that there's a shadow government made up of embedded Democrats in the bureaucracy. Common sense would tell me I don't need a story for that I know this. common sense would tell me, because I know liberalism and I know who they are and I know how they operate, common sense would tell me from before I was sworn in that there's going to be thousands of Democrats and leftists in the government that are going to be trying to undermine me. So what I would do, if it were me, I'd root them out. I would find out who they are, and as they begin acting, I'd call a press conference and point it out to people. And I would say, I'd name names. And here's what they're doing, and here's who they are, and here's where we think they link to. I mean, if the purpose of the Trump administration is to reorganize and rearrange the government and take it back for the people, whenever this typical inside the Beltway stuff starts, I would call it out. I would point it out. I would name names if I could prove it.
I totally agree. I think that's what needs to happen. I think he needs to come out and actually just bring it to light and expose these people.
Well, let me tell you what else is going on, though. This is just fact of life. The establishment, not so much these embedded bureaucrats, but there are powerful, wealthy people whose names you don't even know, who are at every level of the establishment. They're in government, they're outside of government. I will guarantee you, well, I shouldn't say guarantee, because I couldn't prove this if I had to, but it's common sense to me that Trump has already been given warnings and the what-fors, and you better watch yourself. We're going to let you go only so far if you get too close to home, because this is the establishment. These people run the world. John, not just Washington. These are the globalists that run the world. And they're just not going to sit idly by while some guy that they don't respect shows up and tries to dismantle it. And they will use implied threats, direct threats, going after Ivanka and the family and leaking stories that Melania was a hooker, and all this stuff is out there. It's vicious, vicious stuff. Okay, the sharks and the piranha fish are biting. We rejoin the White House press briefing.
With what he had sent the vice president out in particular. The White House counsel informed the president immediately. The president asked him to conduct a review of whether there was a legal situation there. That was immediately determined that there wasn't. That was what the president believed at the time from what he had been told, and he was proved to be correct. The issue, pure and simple, came down to a matter of trust. And the president concluded that he no longer had the trust of his national security advisor over.
It was proper for the incoming national security advisor, not part of an administration, to be discussing an issue as sensitive as sanctions.
Look, I mean, his job is to discuss issues with his counterparts. I mean, Charles Krauthammer put it perfectly last night. That's what he's supposed to be doing. I mean, that's his job. We would constantly read out throughout the transition who he was speaking to, how he was getting ready. The president was receiving congratulatory calls from around the world. We would read out the world leader calls. The job of the incoming NSA is to sit down with the counterparts and start that dialogue. And that's exactly what he did. So the question wasn't, did he do anything improper or illegal? It's the question of, could he be trusted further? And that trust, or the erosion of that trust, was frankly the issue. So,
Can the president instruct him to talk about sanctions?
No, absolutely not. No. But and there's that's never.
So what do you prefer he had not done?
See, that's just it right here.
I think the president had no problem with the fact that he acted in accord with what his job was supposed to be doing. He had the ability to talk about issues that were important, whether it was that or the 30 other countries that he spoke to. That was part of his job. As has been noted by many people, that's what the National Security Advisor and, frankly, other positions do. They begin the process of preparing their incoming job by talking to counterparts, people who have previously held the job, etc. If he had not done that, there would be questions as to whether he's properly prepared on day one.
Conversation about sanctions.
No, the issue isn't whether or not what he discussed. There's been a complete legal review of that, and there's no issue with that. The issue is whether or not he failed to properly inform the vice president, or not be honest with them, or not remember it. But that's the plain and simple issue. And when he lost trust with the president, that's when the president asked for and received his resignation.
There you go. That's it. That's their story. They're sticking with it.
Conway, the counsel to the president, said that the president continued to have trust in General Flynn.
Right.
What happened between yesterday morning and yesterday evening that led the president to lose confidence in General Flynn?
Well, I'm not going to get into the specifics of where the president's thinking was, but I will just say, as I noted in the opening statement, that it was an evolving and eroding process. And so at the end of the day, the president made a decision, as he does on all subjects, and asked for and received the national security advisors. But he is one of those people that we've noted before. When he's ready to make a decision, he makes it, whether it's hiring somebody or asking for someone's resignation. Once he is determined that he has made a decision on any subject, that's when he informs his staff. So going into the day, it was an evolving situation. He made a determination late in the day, and he executed on it. Yeah, Alexis.
Somebody asked him if the media played a role in it. Just somebody asked him.
Was it a difficult decision for the president to let General Flynn go?
Well, sure. I mean, General Flynn is a dedicated public service. He's headed the DIA. He has been an outstanding member of the Army, both as an officer and then as a flag officer. He's served this country admirably. And I think the president appreciated his service to his nation, his commitment to his campaign, and his service to this country so far. But at some point, the decision came down on whether or not that trust had eroded. The important matters, as I mentioned, that are before the president when he's dealing with issues of world matters, of all of the issues, friends and allies, foes, hotspots. He needs to rely on a national security advisor to give him sage advice. And I think at a certain point, that guidance, that trust eroded, and the president, as he does on all matters, ultimately decides that when he's ready to make a decision, he executes. Alexis.
Questions. Does the president believe that anything that he discussed with General Flynn during the transition might have been construed by the general?
It was like Gloria Swanson asking a question there.
Encouragement to discuss sanctions with the Russian ambassador. That's question number one.
Like watching Sunset Boulevard here.
So we're going to pause. So on the first, again, as I made clear, there's nothing that the general did that was a violation of any sort. He was well within his duties.
Well, then you got rid of him because the media was hounding you.
I will say it again. What this came down to is a matter of trust. The president was glad that he was out there conducting his job, preparing for his job, going back and forth with his counterparts throughout the world, much as the president had done, with all of these world leaders calling the president, congratulating him, looking to set up calls for him once he was inaugurated. Similarly, General Flynn was beginning that process with his counterparts throughout the world. That was never of a concern to the president from day one that he was briefed from the White House counsel. The issue, plain and simple, came down to a matter of trust. And once that occurred, it was over. So,
they got their talking point. They're not. That's it. They lost trust in the guy. But why? Did the media cause that to happen? What happened?
In place, and we know from intel it did on sanctions, creates a problem for the president in any way. That is not a problem. That General Flynn discussed sanctions with the Russians.
Why don't you guys ask if Trump regrets that he won? Just get it out of there.
Enough. There was nothing in what General Flynn did in terms of conducting himself that was an issue. What came down to, plain and simple, was him misleading the vice president and others.
Sounds like a great guy.
Not having a firm grasp on his recollection of that. That's it.
Question number two. Lawmakers on Capitol Hill from both sides of the aisle would like to investigate or probe or ask more questions about this. Does the president hope to cooperate with those investigations? Would he instruct members who his staff who work for him here?
Let's see what we get here.
In the administration to cooperate with those investigations?
Well, we're going to comply with the law. I think the president feels very confident. The review that was conducted by White House counsel was very thorough and concluded very conclusively, as he had first instinctively come to the conclusion that there was nothing wrong. So, people are free to do what they wish, but I think that they will find exactly what the president first believed and what the White House counsel concluded. And frankly, I believe a couple publications even reported that there was no investigation for a reason, because there was not an issue of law, it was an issue of trust. George.
That's true.
George.
When do you expect to have a replacement in place? And secondly, on another topic, there was a report yesterday that one of your colleagues said the White House is keeping dossiers on reporters. Yeah. Can you say if that's true or not?
That is absolutely not true. There are no dossiers being kept. Just a binder that I put right here. That's about it.
Oh, come on.
That was a joke.
Tell them you got dossiers on reporters. They're going to want to be in them.
The timetable on a replacement.
Just like the way he handled this situation, the president will meet with individuals, and when he's ready to make a decision and he feels as though the person is qualified and can properly advise him on the issue, he'll make that decision. But that's all. As all decisions rest with him. I'm just going to go to my first Skype seat. John Huck of WKVVU out of Las Vegas. John?
Thank you so much on behalf of our viewers here in Southern Nevada for the opportunity to join you today. As you know, Sean, Las Vegas has suffered terribly in the last recession, more so than perhaps any other city in the country.
With what?
As the administration moves forward with repealing financial regulations and possibly rolling back Dodd-Frank, what guarantees can you make to Nevadans that those actions won't lead banks and investment banks to re-engage with the risky financial behaviors that tanked our economy the last time and left taxpayers here on the hook to bail those banks out?
Thanks, John. I think one of the things, if you look at the intent of Dodd-Frank, it was to make sure that we didn't have institutions that were too big to fail. And frankly, it has actually created institutions that are now too big to fail.
We got what we wanted. We wanted the answers to the Flynn circuit. And I'll just tell you what I heard. You correct me if I'm wrong. Flynn's a great guy. He was doing a great job. He didn't do anything illegal. He didn't do anything unethical. He just didn't tell the truth to the vice president. He sent the vice president out there and made the vice president look bad. The vice president was telling everybody that Flynn did not bring up anything when talking to the Russian ambassador. And then later we find out that Flynn did. So he had misled the vice president. The vice president gone out there and because of that had misrepresented what he thought the truth was. And so Flynn had lost trust. Trump had lost trust with Flynn because now once he's lied once or once he's been unsure of what he said to who, and the president feels he can't rely on him anymore, even though he didn't do anything wrong. Substantively, he's a good guy. He's a great patriot. Strictly a matter of trust. And that's the answer that Spicer gave, and he stuck with it no matter what the question was. But I'll tell you what's going to happen. In his answer and repeated answers, he obviously repeatedly complimented Flynn. He talked about what a patriot the guy is, what a great American he is, how great he was doing his national security, but he had just lost the president's trust. One of the drive-bys said, well, yesterday morning everything was hunky-dory, and then late last night you get rid of it. What happened during the day to cause the trust to evolve? Well, we're not going to get into the daily machinations of how the president's day goes and this and that. Suffice it to say, it's a matter of trust. There have even been some people who said no investigation here is even necessary. Nothing wrong happened. And he quoted Dr. Krauthammer saying it's much ado about nothing other than the lie to the vice president. So that's what they're going to try to stick with. Before we go to the break, I want to amend my answer to the last caller who asked me what I would do to expose a shadow government in the White House. And I stick by my answer. But there's one other thing that I would advise the president, because that was the question. What would you do? What would you tell the president to do? I would suggest that the president turn off MSNBC just once a day and replace whatever he watches there with a monologue from this program. The president likes TV, so watch a ditto cam version of a monologue from this program in any day, and that would, I think, go a long way to providing valuable assistance to the White House. That I would do that in addition to everything else that I said. We'll be back. Okay, Spicer just got to the nub of something here in a break, and this is good. He keeps trying to steer the media to the story here, what the Trump administration, the real story here is the leaks. And he didn't say this, but I'm just going to tell you, if this had all happened with Obama in the White House, and Obama's national security person had made a phone call with a Russian, you wouldn't know about it. We wouldn't know about it. Nobody would have leaked it. Now, the story here is Flynn has this conversation with the Russian ambassador, which most everybody agrees is perfectly normal, understandable, and sensible. He's the incoming national security advisor. He's making phone calls, not just to the Russians. He's calling other foreign governments and setting up future powwows with Trump on the phone. It's part of the transition. The reason we know about this is that there was a leak of the substance of the phone call. And we're now back to this name, Sally Yates, who claims that she knew the details of the phone call and that she tried to warn the president about this when it happened. She's an Obama holdover. So Spicer correctly said, we have people in this government who are leaking. I'll tell you what this is. And I have to speculate. It's intelligence guided by experience. I think that there are people in the intelligence community and in the law enforcement community who do not like Trump at all. It's ideological. It has nothing to do with what Trump said at any time during the campaign. It has nothing to do with what Trump said about immigration. He may have said some things that insulted some intelligence people along the way in the campaign, but this is ideological. These and by the way, it's also establishment versus outsider. Many of the people in the intelligence, I'm stunned at how many people, and it's understandable, so I ought not be stunned. But I nevertheless am stunned by how many Americans think that everybody in law enforcement is a first-class A#1 patriot and that everybody in the intelligence community is. We have 300 million people in this country, and we don't all think alike, and we all don't define patriotism the same way, and not all of us love America. And some of them, the leftists, think America's guilty. Some think that America is the problem in the world. America is not the solution. And some of them work in the intelligence community. Some of them work at the CIA. Some of them work at the FBI. Some of them work everywhere. And if you've got enemies of Trump, because he's not establishment, he's an outsider, if you have people there who've devoted their lives to gathering intelligence around the world to protect the United States, but they've got a differing ideology. I mean, you see the left every day on the protest march. You see how deranged and unhinged they are and how they put everything about them first, and the country comes second, third, or way over and lower down the list. So to me, it appears if Sally Yates had the details of the phone call between Flynn and the Russian ambassador, and if she was trying to get hold of Trump, the Trump transition to advise them this was going on, well, I'm not saying she's the leaker, don't misunderstand, but somebody is. Somebody had to leak this. And it's clear to me that has Trump hired people that he doesn't know are opposed to him? Has Trump hired people that are working, just now getting settled in the bureaucracy? I don't think so. Trump hasn't got that many people confirmed. It's a known fact that Trump's cabinet's the latest to be confirmed and put to work. Well, I don't know. Secure line. Why would you mean Flynn? Why didn't he want a secure line? I don't know. I have no idea why it was even. But if he was on a secure line, somebody either didn't give him one. I have no idea. That's just all part of the mix. Why was somebody able to listen in? Why was somebody able to tap it? It's clearly people within the government who have absolutely no use for Trump, who are doing their best to undermine him and his administration. And Spicer basically alleged it. He alluded to it and told the media, look, I know I can't sit here and tell you guys how to do your jobs, but this is a huge story. And it happens. This is not just to us. There were leaks in the Obama administration. Leaks. Well, that's true. There have been leaks. I mean, it's a way of life in Washington. You're never going to wipe them out. But the media, if you've got a leak that they like that can help them move their agenda forward, they're not going to have a problem with it at all, like this one. As I say, if this had happened in Obama's transition in 2008, before he was inaugurated, we'd have never heard about this. This wouldn't have caused a movement on the Richter scale at all. Nobody would have thought there was anything about this. Anyway, we've reached the moment where I have to take another brief time out. Back in just a second. Say, there's some other news out there. I want to get to it before I get back to this stuff. David Duke has endorsed Keith Ellison for chairman of the Democrat National Committee. And I just want everybody to know that. Greetings and welcome back, folks. El Rushmo, not deterred, not sidetracked, not taken off the main path at any time here at the Excellence in Broadcasting Network. David Duke tweeted out Keith Ellison, Sally Boynton Brown, Jemu Green would all be excellent choices, but I really like Keith Ellison. I mean, at least he knows. At least he knows what? We don't know, but Keith Ellison knows. He's one of the Muslims. He's either the only or he's still the only elected Muslim in the U.S. House of Representatives. I thought there might have been a second one. Anyway, David Duke, former Grand Lizard of the KKK, has endorsed Keith Ellison as chairman of the Democrat National Committee. That singer that showed up in the Make America Great gown at the Grammys, who I pointed out what happened to her yesterday. Her record, her album was at number 500 some odd thousand on Amazon, went to number 3. It was on number 1 on the new and upcoming. She just blew it away. She outselling Beyonce and Jay-Z and whoever the heck else. And it's a great, great sign. It was that's all the Trump people out there waiting, just give them a chance to demonstrate that they're there, and they will do it in the face of all this left-wing protest stuff. And they did it big time, and so now she's getting death threats. She is now getting death threats over her dress. She's being sent tweets demanding that she die. And she's 25. She's a multicultural singer. She intended to send a message of tolerance and love. But a bunch of bile-spewing leftists on social media called her, well, I can't repeat the words. They called her a blah, 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 a disgrace, a dumb Uncle Tom, F Donald Trump, and F that joy via blank, blank, B-I-itch. I mean, it's just vile stuff that they're tweeting out there. The left has an idea that you know what the Ides of March is March 15th. And this is from one of the distinguished left-wing websites. There's an ongoing effort now for everybody in the world to send Donald Trump a postcard on March 15th telling him that he's scum, telling him that he's just it stinks and they should quit. And the left-wing website thinks that they can actually make a dent in Trump's psyche if they can generate millions and millions of postcards sent to him from around the world. United Nations official reveals the real reason behind the global warming scare. You know, this is from the UK Daily Mail. 2 stories in the last 5 days about how NOAA, the National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Association, the #1 climate change federal agency, had literally made up some data. A whistleblower in the agency finally got fed up with what he was seeing and offered conclusive proof that how NOAA has been fabricating data, and they released a bunch of data right before the last Paris Accords meeting. One of the premises of the global warming crowd is that there has been a pause. You know, you've heard there hasn't been any warming in the last 17 years. There hasn't been any warming. And the computer models all said the warming would continue. So the pro-global warming crowd's been very, very distraught. And they've been looking for excuses and reasons to tell people why the warming was halted. That would not discredit their premise. And the way they did it was to say, guess what? We found additional information to show that the warming has actually continued. That everybody who thinks the warming hasn't continued is wrong. And the whistleblower said they just made it up. They literally just made up the data, and they timed its release right before the Paris Accords. Well, what's happened next? Investors Business Daily. Economic systems. The alarmists keep telling us their concern about global warming is all about man's stewardship of the environment. They keep telling us they're trying to save the planet. They're trying to make sure that ecosystems survive so that humans can survive beyond 50 years from now. Well, at a news conference last week in Brussels, Christiana Figueres, the executive secretary of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, admitted that the goal of environmental activists is not to save the world from ecological calamity, but rather to destroy capitalism. A climate change activist in Brussels at a press conference actually admitted it. She said, "This is the first time in the history of mankind that we are setting ourselves the task of intentionally, within a defined period of time, to change the economic development model that has been reigning for at least 150 years since the Industrial Revolution. This is probably the most difficult task we have ever given ourselves, which is to intentionally transform the economic development model for the first time in history." She's talking about capitalism. She admitted the task at hand is overthrowing and transforming capitalism. That is the only economic model that's worked in the last 150 years. And she has admitted it. I've only seen this in Investors Business Daily. I have not seen this story anywhere else in the drive-by media, and we won't see it anywhere else. And therefore, a bunch of millennial tech blogger types and other young millennial college students and others will never know that one of the United Nations leading climate activists admitted that the objective is to overthrow capitalism. Now, I mentioned at the beginning of the program a piece that I read at a publication called Foreign Policy. It's a magazine. It's owned by the Washington Post. And it's an effort to compete with another magazine called Foreign Affairs. Foreign Affairs is a very august publication of the Council on Foreign Relations, which, of course, has a symbiotic relationship with the Trilateral Commission. This is the Washington Post attempt to get in on the business of elite establishment types reading about foreign policy. Now, these people have nothing to do with foreign policy. Foreign policy is set by the President of the United States and his team. But there is this thing called the Council of Foreign Relations, and it's made up of, well, elites from media, from academia, from corporate America, and they sit as a shadow, doing what they can to influence American foreign policy or undermine it if necessary, or promote it if necessary. But they have no official ties unless one of them happens to be chosen by a president to join his administration. And Foreign Policy magazine is an effort to get in on that august elite business. And they have a piece that is headlined something to the effect that Moscow, i.e. Vladimir Putin, all of a sudden have become very, very frightened by Donald Trump. Now, this cuts against the grain. The narrative out of the Democrat Party is that Trump and Putin are brothers in crime or politics or whatever. If you know, the Democrat Party thinks the Russians cost them election, and they also think that Donald Trump is just buddy-buddy with Putin. So they think that Putin worked with others to hack the Democrats to give the White House to Trump. But now along comes Foreign Policy magazine asserting that the Kremlin very, very worried now because they have become totally bamboozled and surprised by Trump. In 2016, a senior Russian official explained to a group of visiting foreigners why the government had decided not to celebrate the 100th anniversary of the Bolshevik Revolution. Yeah, it was a turning point in Russian history, and yeah, Putin sees today's Russia as a successor to both the Tsars and the Bolsheviks. But celebrating a revolution might send the wrong message to society. They don't want the society thinking about revolution. because revolutions take place against governments, and Putin doesn't want a revolution out there. So they just decided in Russia to ignore the 100th anniversary of the Bolsheviks, which is a big deal. It would be like us ignoring an anniversary of the Civil War or anything about it for fear of inciting a similar revolution here. The last thing the Russian government expected was that the year 2017 would bring it face to face, not with a revolution of the past, but with a revolution of the present. The radical regime change taking place in the United States as a result of the victory of Donald Trump. It is Trump's electoral revolution that has captured the imagination and fanned the fears of Russian elites today. The search for a key to Trump's mind-boggling, miscellaneous gusher of policy directives has tended to focus on his, get this paragraph, I should have set this up. This is an analysis of where the Russians are and how they analyze Trump. The search for a key to Trump's mind-boggling and miscellaneous gusher of policy directives has tended to focus on his disturbingly erratic, vindictive, simplistic, narcissistic, insecure, and occasionally deluded personality. What most observers have been late to recognize is the extent to which, behind his mask as a showman, Donald Trump actually views himself as a revolutionary insurgent with a mission to dismantle America's old regime. This story purports to say that the Russian elite is shocked that that's who Trump really is. They thought Trump was just this showman, entertainer, performer, narcissistic, sort of unhinged, but manageable. They have become, according to this, stunned to learn that Trump means it, that Trump is serious about dismantling America's old guard. Trump's tactics certainly belong to the classic revolutionary playbook. His shock and awe style of executive action is designed to rattle Congress. It's designed to catch his opponents unprepared and to incite his base to wage war on the establishment. The extreme polarization that Donald Trump deliberately foments allows him to fend off an opportunistic alliance of the Republican elite with the Democrat Party in defense of the constitutional system, ensuring the protests will be largely impotent. Let me translate this for you. What they have concluded, according to this, in Moscow, is that Trump's purposeful divisionaryism, his purposeful polarization, the fact that he's purposely divisive, means that he is deliberately trying to prevent the Republicans from forming an alliance with the Democrats to defend the establishment. They are shocked that Trump has been able to carve this out and is executing it. The extreme polarization that Trump foments has allowed him to prevent the Republican elite forming an alliance with the Democrat Party, i.e. the establishment coming together, to defend itself. And this is ensuring that all of the anti-Trump protests will be largely impotent because they cannot affect what their objective is, and that is to focus everybody on getting rid of Trump because Trump's keeping everybody off guard. And Trump is making it hard for the Democrat and Republican elites to get together against him. Well, that all before the Flynn thing happened, I should point out. In the words of White House strategist-in-chief Steve Bannon, Trump is positioning himself as the global leader of an anti-global movement that is anti-elite, anti-establishment, anti-liberal, and nationalistic. What we're witnessing now, Bannon said to the Washington Post, is the birth of a new political order, and the more frantic the media elites become, the more powerful our new order becomes. So this story purports to say that all of this media going nuts stuff is exactly what Trump wants, is exactly what Trump and his advisors want. The more frantic a handful of media elites become, the more powerful the new Trump political order becomes. That's what they quote Bannon as saying. Story goes on to say that what the Kremlin now fears most is that Trump may be ousted or even killed. That's what they worry about most. You know why? I'll tell you why when we come back. Don't go away. Okay, back to the conclusion here at Foreign Policy Magazine. With Donald Trump in the White House, Vladimir Putin has lost his monopoly over geopolitical unpredictability. The Kremlin's ability to shock the world by taking the initiative and trashing ordinary international rules and customs has allowed Russia to play an oversized international role and to punch above its weight. In other words, Putin's unpredictability has allowed him to be a much bigger and more powerful world leader than he actually is. That Russia just ain't that big a deal anymore. Anywhere near as big as the Soviet Union was. But Putin's erratic unpredictability and deciding one day to go invade here or there kept everybody on edge. But now he's lost the monopoly on that with the arrival of Donald Trump. He now has to share this capacity for nobody knows what he's going to do next with a new American president who is vastly more powerful than he, Putin, is. More world leaders are watching anxiously to discover what Trump is going to do next than are worrying about what Putin will do. Now, this is a Washington Post publication writing this stuff, analyzing Russia and Trump. And they're saying that Putin now feels a distinct competition with Trump and feels like Trump is overshadowing him. Trump is out-Putining Putin. And Putin doesn't like this, but there's nothing much he can do about it. Using anti-Americanism as an ideological crutch has become much more dubious now that the American electorate has chosen as their president a man publicly derided as Putin's puppet. What the Kremlin fears most today is that Trump will be ousted or even killed. His ouster, according to Kremlin insiders, is bound to unleash a bipartisan anti-Russian campaign in Washington. In other words, if the Republicans and Democrats could get together and get rid of Trump, then Putin thinks, my God, I'm listening to what they hate me. They're going to come after me. They're going to join up. The Republicans and Democrats are going to come after me. Republicans because they just will, and Democrats because they think I stole the election from them. So, as a result, Putin has become a hostage to Trump's survival and success. This has seriously restricted Russia's geopolitical options. The Kremlin's perfectly aware that Democrats want to use Russia to discredit and impeach Trump, while Republican elites want to use Russia to deflate and discipline Trump. The Russian government fears not only Trump's downfall, of course, but also the possibility that he could opportunistically switch to a tough anti-Moscow line in order to make peace with Republican leaders in Congress. Upshot of this piece at Foreign Policy is that Vladimir Putin owned the world till Donald Trump came along. Donald Trump has now trumped Putin, and Putin is a prisoner to whatever Trump does or what happens to Trump. And it's in his strong interests for Trump to survive political controversies involving Russia or assassination attempts or what have you. It's amazing to me, all this stuff is. The last paragraph in this foreign policy story, what is especially dangerous from the Russian perspective is that certain nationalistic circles in Russia are falling in love with what Trump is doing in America. In January, for the first time since Putin returned to the Kremlin in 2012, Putin was not the most frequently cited name in the Russian media. Trump is. And although most of Trump's Russian admirers are loyal to Putin personally, they also dream of purging the global elites who occupy the Kremlin. So this story is all about how Trump has come in, and where Russia thought they were getting a bumbling, inexperienced outsider, they've got a guy who's taken over Putin's role in the world, what Putin thought his role was. They've destroyed a Putin monopoly, and now he's so popular inside Russia that insurgents and revolutionaries in Russia wouldn't mind a Trump there. At the same time, Putin cannot afford for anything to happen to Trump, because if it does, that means the Republicans and Democrats will unify and align against Russia and against Putin, whether it's warranted or not, just because of the state, the current condition of American politics. The White House, if you're just joining us, the press briefing today clearly attempted to change everybody's focus to the leak aspect of this. And that is a serious, they're not wrong to do that. There's just a bunch of questions that arise. I mean, if something had to happen, because up until yesterday, Flynn was in tight. So something's happened to make Trump ask him to leave. But nothing changed as far as, Flynn, what he did happened back in December, supposedly. But what he did, nobody would know if it hadn't been hacked, if it hadn't been monitored, phone hadn't been tapped, and people listened to it. Anyway, people have been patiently waiting, and it's time to get back to the phones. This is Jeannie in Hutchinson, Kansas. It's great to have you here. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for taking my call.
You bet. I'm glad you waited.
I was initially calling because of how investigative reporting has just gone down the drain over the last decades. You know, when once Woodward and Bernstein investigated Watergate, they did it covertly. And when they had the facts and were able to prove them, they reported the story. Now, the reporters investigate on live TV with the people that they're investigating, and they just throw questions at them, and they don't allow them to answer the questions. And so then they report rumor as truth, and they throw around the phrase, what did the president know and when did he know it? Well, they don't really, they haven't earned the right to say that because they haven't really done their jobs. George Stephanopoulos is great at interrupting you and not letting you answer the questions. Katie Couric has done several shows where she's been proven totally wrong in what she's presented or how she edited it and that type of thing. And the
look, I know these excuses, these examples are endless. NBC editing the 9/11 tape, the phone call from the well-known white Hispanic George Zimmerman, to make it look like he was a racist pig in describing the Trayvon Martin circumstance. There's no question the media isn't media anymore. And that's the best I can say it. There is no media. Do you not even find it strange that there is now just this adjective to the media? It's like its own branch of government or its own self-contained entity that is an opposition force to just one of the political parties. It's not a news-gathering organization anymore. There are elements of it that do that, but its primary purpose is to advance the political agenda of the Democrat Party, and the media serves as a political opponent to Republicans and conservatives, and everybody just accepts that. That's just what it's become. The media is yet another obstacle that Republicans have to find their way around or through. They are not highly respected. Their public opinion polls are maybe the least respected line of work in America today. Of lines of work that are legal, that would be so surveyed. But I get your point. Investigative journalism, there isn't any. There's just attack journalism, and it's happening right in front of our eyes each and every day. And that's exactly right. I mean, you witness it each and every day. There's a, I want to go back to yesterday's program. We played 4 sound bites of Stephen Miller, a Trump administration advisor and strategist, and how he just ran rings around Stephanopoulos, left Stephanopoulos speechless, and pointed out this is how it's done. This is what dealing with an opposition media is. That's what it looks like. And lo and behold, there's a great piece today at Town Hall by Doug McKinnon. White House advisor eviscerates a shell-shocked George Stephanopoulos. And it goes on to describe Miller's appearance on all the 4 Sunday shows that he appeared on, and how he presented a textbook case for any Republican going, if you're going to accept the invitation to go on these shows, how to do it. How to not accept the premise, how to come armed with facts, how to just refute every premise presented to you, how to destroy every false bit of information that's contained in a question. Miller did this time and time and time again with Stephanopoulos. And, of course, now Miller is being trashed by the drive-bys and leftist agitators. Miller is now being targeted for destruction, if you will, which he knew was going to happen. Everybody knows it's going to happen. That's when you have to gut it up. You finish an appearance like that, you know you've hit a home run for your side. You know you've done well, and you hope that it influences others to try to imitate your appearance when they go on TV. And you know you're going to get hit for doing so, but you hope that it has some kind of long-lasting benefit to it. And then you see where your performance, your appearance, stellar as it was, is now coming under vicious assault by the left, which cannot allow for people who did not see it to be told about it. And it tries to change the minds of the people who did see it to convince them they didn't see what they saw. It's a great piece here by Doug McKinnon. And he says the tape of Stephen Miller with Stephanopoulos should become required viewing for any Republican, conservative, or faith-based communicators hoping to inject some sanity back into policy debates hijacked by dishonest, hate-filled, and increasingly inflammatory rhetoric of a growing part of the so-called mainstream media, the entertainment industry, and academia. And it was all of that. Back after this, folks. Sit tight. Hey, in the midst of all of this, Trump just signed his first bill today. First piece of legislation. You know what it does? I was watching CNN. They're just livid. CNN is reporting that Trump's bill that he signed weakens oil and gas and mining regulations. And you should have seen them when they announced this. They're just shaking their heads. They go, oh, my God. And what they're shaking their heads about is he won't stop. We can't make him stop. We thought we had him paralyzed with a flame. He just keeps doing it. And that's what's going to continue to happen. They're not going to stop him. They're going to be in the dust. I don't care what the media thinks they've got. And these Republicans are making such a mistake. Here, listen to this montage that we put together. Republicans are joining Democrats demanding that Trump be investigated.
I think the whole issue of Russia and our relations with Russia and our approach to Russia, all those questions should be answered.
I think Congress needs to be informed of what actually General Flynn said to the Russian ambassador about lifting sanctions. And I want to know, did General Flynn do this by himself or was directed by somebody to do it?
The president should discuss, what he knows and what happened. You're talking about some sensitive issues. But for the most part, I think it's important for the president to, lay out what happened, yeah.
Yeah, so the Democrats start raising hell, and the Republicans think they've got to get on board with that because that's what the media is demanding. And you got to stay on the good side of the media. You just can't run the risk of making the media mad, so you got to join the Democrats. So now the stories are out there. CNN has one, the Republicans joining with Democrats, demanding that Trump and Flynn and their relationship with Russia be investigated and explained. I'll tell you what, this reminds me in a way of some of the battles between the legislative and executive branches during Reagan. In normal times, the legislative and executive branches are at war with each other for power. Folks, that's normal. That's by design. You just haven't seen it because the Democrats ran the legislative branch first 6 years of Obama, and they just gave him every bit of power they could. They just laid down, and they invested total Democrat power in Obama. Well, now they want it back, now that Trump's in the White House. And now you're going to see these battles, executive versus legislative. And Trump's going to have to defend his turf. You want to investigate me? Well, screw you. I'm going to investigate you. Anyway, it's going to be fun to watch. It's going to be frustrating, too. We never finish. Things never end. We just have to call a timeout now and then. But we will be back, my friends, as the world burns around us. We will continue to fight the flames and endeavor to do our broadcast each and every day.